KWVE-FM9173. Or post your questions using the hashtag #LiveRyanRies on his Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.
All right. Another Saturday night. I'm actually excited to be back, dude. I was gone on a little family.
It was pretty crazy not having you here last week.
Was it?
Yeah.
I was watching for a short time. Yeah. I was driving in the car, but it was getting janky reception.
How was vacation?
It was good. We went down to SeaWorld. I've never been to SeaWorld. I told my parents, I said, Dad, and if some of you guys are listening, you guys know who my dad is. He's Ryan Ries, and he completely deprived me of SeaWorld. And my mom, Ryan Ries, deprived me of SeaWorld. I've never been there in my life. Is that crazy?
So you and Bjorn were just like going nuts.
We were going nuts, dude. We were eating all those ice creams and petting, what do you call those things? Those things that sting you. The
stingrays.
Stingrays, dude. Stingrays would actually come up to you and you could pet them. Yeah. See, I was deprived. I should have been petting stingrays years ago. And then what else did we do? Went to a museum, saw the dinosaurs. I haven't seen a dinosaur museum since I was a kid. I've been deprived. You know what? I realized there's a lot of things I got to start doing again. You know? It was fun. I felt like a little kid with my little nieces and nephews.
Do you need to go to the park or something tomorrow afternoon? Maybe go hang out in the jungle gym and swings.
I got to do it. I surf a lot, and there's a lot of kids out there. So I feel actually I went surfing the other day, and I was out here at Churches. It's the Marine base, and there was all of a sudden all these groups of kids started coming out. There was like 15 here, 10 here, another, and they were just taking all the waves. I'm like, where are these kids coming from anyway? Little like, from like 12 years old all the way down to like 9 years old. I'm like, hey, where are you guys all coming from? Like, what's going on here? Like, oh, we're over here at a camp. What's the camp? And they said it was called Soul Surf. It's actually it's a Christian surf camp that they take 200 kids, and they just they go there for a week. I hit them up because like, how long do you guys come out here? Like, well, we're out here for like a week straight surfing, and it was just really cool to hear that they just teach them about Jesus. Surf all day, eat probably s'mores, and just living the dream. I want to actually enroll next year and hang out with these kids.
You mean your parents never put you in a surf camp
My parents have never put me in a surf camp either, so I was really depressed actually when I left there. But anyway, if you guys just tuned in, this is Live with Ryan Ries. If you're, I got one of my new good friends in the studio, Mike Metzger, Phil Metzger.
We're close.
Phil Metzger. I'm like naming pro FMX guys. Phil Metzger from Budapest.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't know where Budapest is, it's in Hungary, and it surrounds, 6 different countries?
Yeah,
what countries are those?
Exactly. So you got Austria, Slovenia, Romania, Serbia, Croatia, and Ukraine.
Dang. And I actually invited him in here because I heard him speak at the pastors' conference a couple weeks ago. And the way he broke down the gospel and the church nowadays, it's just like how, somehow, Jesus' ministry, when you read about Jesus' ministry, it was very messy. He was dealing with the lame, the blind, the demon-possessed, the mentally ill. I mean, the drunks, the Lazarus was dead. I mean, it was crazy, right? Mm-hmm. And when you were talking at the pastors' conference, you were just talking about how you're this inner city church and how this ministry, it was messy. So before we get into that whole story, if you guys just tuned in, you're driving down the highway, you're probably driving anywhere from Hawaii to Florida, somewhere in the United States listening, or maybe you even tuned in at ryan-reese.com. We have a cool story. It's going to be a story about grace, just God's grace in our lives and the way ministries are done when, in a lot of parts of the world. I mean, if you grew up in here in Southern California like us, used to come into a nice church or, it's very clean, very organized. But the reality is a lot of ministry, and the Jesus ministry was actually very messy and very interesting. So we're going to hear some cool stories about how it goes down in the inner city in Budapest. I got a book in front of me. It's a story of grace beyond the Iron Curtain. And this is actually from Phil Metzger. Where can people buy this?
Amazon.
Go to Amazon.
Most Christian bookstores, Calvary bookstores.
Calvary bookstores, Amazon. A story of grace beyond the Iron Curtain. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard this dude speak, and he touches my heart every time I hear him. So I guarantee this book's gonna be a banger. Sean, before we go on, what stuff do we have cracking this week?
Let me give out the call-out number again. If you guys want to call in for any of your questions, we're going to talk about the struggles of life and everything like usual. And I know this show is going to impact so many out there. The number is 888-564-6173. Again, the number is 888-564-6173. You should lock that in your phone because that number never changes. Also, we've been sharing with you guys, it's so amazing what's been taking place on the radio. Over 41 stations. We're in 12 states. And one thing that's cool, you can let your friends and family know, anybody that you know, you can always watch live. This is live webcast. Go to ryan-ries.com and you can watch us live. Also for the Whosoever, there's a lot of stuff taking place. They got a lot more product that's out right now. New hats I know just dropped. But if you want to see what's taking place with the Whosoevers, go to thewhosoevers.com. If you're behind the vision, and God has given these guys such a great vision, and you feel led to support it in some way, you can. Number one, pray for it. But if you feel led to donate, you can go to the website. A big event, and this is what we've been sharing about a lot, is Israel. And I know that if you're going to go to Israel, I would encourage you now to sign up. You can go to inspiredtravel.com. You can go through the Whosoever website as well and go through the link. That trip will change your life.
It will change your life. I want to add something. We are actually going with my dad, which he's a crazy man on tours, on trips. The stories I hear of them going on tours with Greg Laurie and Chuck and all those guys, they're a bunch of nut jobs, those guys. But my dad is going on a trip with his church, and we are actually joining them. So it's going to be like a group effort. There will probably be like 3 buses. One bus is going to be Spanish bus, and then we have the English-speaking bus, and then we have the immature, amateur, whosoever bus that, will be we're all together as one family there going through the Holy Land, checking out where Jesus was. There'll be an option to get baptized out there, floating the Dead Sea, going to the sites where Jesus casted out the demons, where he was crucified, the tomb. It's amazing. The Bible will come alive if you get a chance to do that with us.
Going there is life-changing. I remember on the last few days when you go into the Old Town of Jerusalem, that's probably one of the most trippiest parts to me. When you're walking through those streets and you see the Dome of the Rock and you see everything that's out there. Man, this is on the news all the time, and then the history that's there. It's completely amazing. So, guys, the date is April 5th through the 17th, 2016, but do not hesitate. Don't procrastinate. Make sure that you sign up right away.
When's the deadline? I think it's like September, right?
September, I believe you have to have some kind of deposit or whatever. So I would encourage you guys, if you're thinking about it, you're on the fence, make sure you make that decision as soon as possible. Also, the high schools. Ryan's been sharing about the Kill the Noise tour. He was able at the end of last year to go to a bunch of high school tours, and this is his passion. This is his vision. We've been telling you guys, if you are a teacher, if you are affiliated with any school, you go to the school. You want to have the Whosoevers come, make sure that you go to ryan-ries.com and you're able to email him that right there if you want to go to the school. These are the schools that are up already. David Starr Jordan High School in Watts on September 23rd. Summit High School in Fontana September 30th, and Rancho Verde in Moreno Valley October 2nd. Those are a couple dates that are already booked, and there's a lot more coming through that we just need to confirm where they're going to go. So make sure if you want us to come to your school that you make sure that you reach out right away.
We're planning to hit schools all year long. We started at the end of last year, and now we're starting up right at the beginning. So you're probably asking, how in the heck can I get the Whosoevers to come to the school? We come out there, we do a concert, and then we give the gospel. It's very simple, and then we get them plugged into a local church in the area. So if you're a local church, or you're obviously wherever church you're at, there's a high school by you. So if you're listening, you want us to come, email us. If you're a teacher, you're a principal, you work there, you're a kid that goes to the school, you want us to come, contact us. We want to come, and we want to reach the kids, because the world that we live in, you guys, I mean, let's just face it. I mean, they have access to anything without you even knowing it. I mean, I can go on and on about this stuff, but we live in a crazy time, but Jesus is coming, and we got to reach as many people as possible. Jesus gave us the Great Commission. So help us to get to those kids and get us out to that school.
The last thing on the announcements is next week, August 15th. This is for the local listeners. The Whosoevers are doing the 3rd annual baptism at Pirates Cove in Newport Beach. It's going to be at 10 a.m., August 15th at 10 a.m., and we encourage you guys, if you've never been baptized, come out and be baptized. It's so amazing because people have questions, what's baptism all about? Well, baptism doesn't save you, but baptism is a picture of what the Lord has done in your life. I think Paul declares it the best in Romans chapter 6, where he says that basically when you go under the water, you're dying to that old life, and when you come out, you're walking in newness of life. That's what it should be. The water represents the grave. You go under, you're like, man, I'm done with my old life, and it's something that's already taken place in your heart. God's changed your life. The Bible says that old things pass away, behold, all things become brand new. And it's a declaration of a truth that God has done in your life. And it's cool because you bring your friends, you bring your family. They have time of worship. They have a message. A lot of times your friends and family, dude, those get baptized the same thing, except the Lord as well. So make sure you come out to that amazing event.
And if you're a bad sinner, the way I was, my dad actually held me under the water for about 2 minutes to make sure.
I remember when we baptized you, it was freezing water.
It was freezing cold. Dude, okay, so check this out. I was back east really quick. I was at a concert, and I was with Lacey, and her husband was telling me about like how he gave his life to the Lord, and then there was this point when he said, I need to get baptized, and he said after he got baptized, because it's a public statement, but it's also like it's a heart issue.
Right.
And he said after he did that, he said, dude, that God just started working heavily in his life, like something like changed. There was a shift in his life. So I'm flying back from the East Coast. I land in Denver, and I called my dad. Hey man, I need to get baptized when I come home. They're like, it's like January, dude. It's raining, it's freezing. I go, I'm getting baptized tonight. I'm on my way home from the East Coast. I land at 3:00, and I'll be at your house right after that from LAX. I need you to dunk me. I show up. Sean McKeon's there. I'm at my dad's house. Pool's freezing cold. I just strip down, dude. I get in my trunks or boxers. I don't remember what I was in. But I just get in there, and then once I got in the pool, I'm like, oh, this is a bad idea. And then I was like, I'm going for it. And I got baptized, and it was just on and cracking ever since then. So you got to do it, and God will honor it, and He'll move for sure.
And for everything else, you can go to www.ryan-ries.com for more information for stuff that's taking place with Ryan as well. That's
awesome. Okay, well, cool. Like I said, we got Phil Metzger from Budapest, Hungary, from the middle of Europe. Dude, okay, so just first of all, how are you even connected to Calvary Chapel?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I got saved here at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in California when I was about 16 years old. Some friends had invited me to a church, and I actually didn't come to the church originally. A buddy of mine, actually Catholic buddy, I was really struggling with like discouragement, and he had said, hey, you should read the Bible. I started reading my Bible. Really, God used it, just touched me. And I had these friends who were Christians, and they were all coming to this school, into this church. So they invited me, heard the gospel, gave my life to the Lord. And basically then, so I was 16 years old. My senior year of high school, I moved from the public high school here down the road to this school. And I wanted to get to study the Bible. I thought I should go to a Christian school, So I came here my senior year, and about halfway through that, some friends of mine, we were all getting together. We were praying, what does God want to do with our lives? And while we were praying, Russia kept coming up in our minds, like, move to Russia.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
And so 3 of us were in high school, and 2 of them were janitors at the school. So,
going to Russia.
And so we went to Pastor Chuck, and he said, man, if I were 40 years younger and single, I'd go with you. He said, it's the Lord. And I've been with Calvary ever since.
Dude, that's awesome. So how in the heck? So did you go? Did you end up going? You ended up
going.
1992,
I graduated high school, and then like a couple weeks later moved to Russia.
And you're always in Southern California. You grew up in Southern California?
Yeah.
So what happened? Okay, so when you get to Russia, what was the game plan over there?
Yeah, right. So
Or how did it go down?
Chuck actually had to give us money to buy our first winter coat because none of us had winter coats.
Dude, it's amazing.
We're from Orange County. It's like the coldest it got was like 50 degrees at night.
And, dude, Russia. I've been in Russia.
Yeah, it's cold.
I've been in Russia before, where in the middle of winter, I think it was like 30 below. So we were in a tour van, sitting there, fully like beanie, hats, gloves, and in like a tour bus.
Yeah.
Freezing cold.
Oh, yeah.
In the bus, like no heat. Like there was heat, but you don't feel it.
It's cold there. So the goal was evangelism, plain and simple, church planning. I've always been a part of church planning. It's always been my heart. Like if you're going to go somewhere and preach the gospel, you got to have something to leave the people who get saved. Right. They need somewhere to get to go.
Yeah, you can't just start a fireworks show and leave.
Yeah, exactly. And so we were kind of the young guys who our passion was on the streets preaching the gospel. Every day did that for hours. That was
so you're just
life.
Cruising through the streets and just set up and like,
back then, man.
How'd that work? Like
we could stand up and just say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something that's really important." I'm not joking. 150 people would stop.
Are you serious?
Yeah. No dramas, no music at the time. There was such a I don't want to say a hunger for like God. It was like a hunger for anything, for anything. And then all of a sudden, every group was there, every cult, everybody was there. Everybody. And so, you know what we started doing? There was these terrible cults. We would stand right next to them and wait till they'd finish their little thing. And then we'd say, you know, this is all wrong and we're going to tell you the truth.
No way.
And then we just start preaching the gospel, you know.
And there was no problems in Russia, no crazy drunk guys coming up trying to fight you guys?
All the time.
Yeah, because it's crazy like that over there.
It's happy hour every hour, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have those. I mean, that's, you know, I guess in many ways I learned how to preach the gospel under adverse circumstances. Totally. Not necessarily persecution, but more just like nothing. It was messy. It was very messy. You know, streets are the streets of Moscow were pretty messy back then. It was dangerous. We never had any. I never had any like persecution or any physical problems. But yeah, drunks all the time or just people. Nobody knew this idea of like somebody's talking, you shouldn't.
Right.
Nobody had that concept at all. And so they would just start talking and then, okay, well, let's talk about that. And then, you know, you kind of learn how to bring things back to Jesus when people interrupt. Like when you have a message and you can just do 1, 2, 3, you get used to doing that. But when people are constantly interrupting, you learn how to turn things back to the Lord. And it was great training ground.
How about the language barrier? I mean,
yeah.
How was
So in the beginning, it was translator.
Got it.
Yeah, it was, and most of the time, you know, people were intrigued by hearing English. And so we would use any skill we had, which basically at 17 is only English. That's the only skill I really had. And so people were intrigued by English. We'd speak English, and then somebody would translate, and there'd be conversation. Yeah.
Sick.
Dope. So, okay, did you guys start churches from there?
Yeah. So I was a part of one church plant there in Moscow, in the capital. Yeah.
So, like, where was it? Was it just like in a building or a house?
Rented a school room. Yeah.
And that's still going on because I know there's Calvary's birth all through Russia now.
Yeah, I think there's like 10 in Moscow.
Dude, that's crazy.
So I haven't been, you know, it was a good experience and a hard experience. But I think I learned things that I'm still using today, both good and bad. And so I was there for 7 months, came back, tried to go back to Russia, and I was denied a visa. And so my friend Greg Opine had just been to Hungary, and he was staying with us, and he's like, hey, you should move over to Hungary. It's gnarly what God's doing there, open doors, you should come over. And so I moved over.
And so now tell us about Budapest, because I know you were sharing at the pastors' conference, and it sounded so cool. Because honestly, when you were speaking, like, I don't think I've heard anything like that at a pastor. I've been going, I got saved 7 years ago. Yeah. And I've been going to all the pastors' conference since. But this last pastors' conference was epic. It was different at Calvary Chapel. Like, I was so pumped to be a part of Calvary Chapel where it's at. It was like fresh and raw. Tony Clark killed it. You killed it. I mean, it was just, but these stories, how it's just like, I really connected, like when you were talking about this, it really connected with my heart because I teach at my dad's church, which is a very organized mega church in Southern California. I teach here at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, but we have our Shine Night here, and it's in a Terrace building. So the people that come, it's very street. I mean, you don't know who the heck's coming in. It's like a transient church. People are coming in high, drunk, on heroin. People's eyes rolling back in their head. You know, the whole deal. Yeah. But when you were talking, you're a Calvary Chapel inner city, and it just, you had my heart because you were going after just anybody is messy, but the grace and mercy, and that's the way church should be. We had a guy here last weekend, a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how there was people that want to, they don't want to bring kids in. They call them street kids that are not Christians, into their youth group. And this is a church from Florida. Wasn't a Calvary Chapel, but I mean, this happens in Calvary Chapels too. This happens everywhere. Right. But it's so crazy where even me, I've been invited to go to schools and teach or do evangelism stuff or whatever. And then after I'm like, I want to bring the kids there. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't really know how to deal with those kids. And when you were speaking, you didn't have any of those walls. And that's why I identified with you. Tell me why you went to Budapest and just some cool stories of how the grace and mercy and the ministry is going down out there.
Yeah, well, you know, so I when I first moved to Hungary, I wasn't in Budapest. You know, I was in more of a kind of a country town, so to speak. And my friend Greg started a church in Budapest. He pastored that for many, many years.
Opine.
Yeah, Greg Opine. And then the Lord just called him back home to America. He'd been there for, I think, 17 years in Hungary, and it was just time. The Lord said, it's time to go back to America. And he gave me the privilege of getting to take over the church.
That's amazing.
And that was almost 9 years ago now. And so, you know, I hadn't been ministering in the city, but when the Lord called me there, my heart just kind of melted for the city, because you realize in every one of these buildings, there are so many messed up lives, so many hurting people. You know, the Bible college that I'm a part of, it's a town of like 700 people. So you kind of know almost everybody, you know, every situation. But one building next to our church might hold 4,000 people, you know, and I don't know their stories. I don't know what's happening. And I guess the Lord just kind of turned my heart. I never set out to become like an inner city pastor, but it's what the Lord did. And I'm so thankful. And I think I've learned that, I think I am learning too, is that, and I tried to convey that at that conference, is that the gospel is the most important thing. And if that means that I've got to give up some of my own ideas of what my church should look like in order to present Christ, then who wins on that? Should the gospel win, or should what I want, what makes me happy, win?
Like a program.
Yeah.
A program.
Yeah. Or just like order, you know, like, no, we don't
order,
let, you know, it's easy to say no.
Out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. It's so much easier to say no. I mean, we learn this as parents, right? It's easier to tell our children no, like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't. And then we find ourselves just constantly saying no, because it's easier. It's easier in a church to say no. No, we don't let that happen. No, we don't do that. And I've done that. I've done that a million times. But to stop and say, wait, does the gospel say no? Like, that's the real question. Is the power of God able to break through that, or is it no? And so when guys come in that are, you know, homeless, and they smell, you know, what do you do? You know,
you stink. We're not going to let you come in here.
Exactly.
It's just not going to work.
Exactly. You know,
but that happens.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Believe it or not.
Oh my gosh. All the time. You know, or the girl that has obviously been working the streets.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, who, you know, she's scared to death to be there. She's scared to death.
So it's a prostitute in the
prostitute that comes to church.
Right.
Yeah, prostitute comes to. There's a ministry that reaches out to prostitutes, and she decides, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go to church. She shows up. She's never been in a place like that ever in her life, and you can tell. And it is so critical how people look at her in those few minutes.
Oh yeah.
You know, that greeter has to know we don't give anybody that. We don't just say hi, but we got to make them know, like, you're welcome here. You know, They got to feel that because they're going to run, you know. And so I think that a part of the process for us has been as a church to say, we're here to reach the unreached. And the minute you make that decision, you have to then say, okay, then what are our priorities?
I think, I want to keep going.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say that. I think that's just one of those words like, hey, I love you, man. Like, do you really love me?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
it's like, churches do that all the time. We're reaching the unreachable or the unreached.
Yeah.
It's like a slogan, but they're not.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And that's a huge problem.
And I think, you know, I would even say I've done that. We've done that. We had to wrestle with that. Like, are we really reaching the unreached, or are we just, do we want to say that because it sounds more missional, more outreach focused, you know? And in many ways, you know, it's an interesting dynamic because our church is our outreach because of its location.
Oh yeah, it's prime right
It's
there
just
in downtown.
inner city.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a homeless guy that sleeps on the floor, the streets, or the stairs right there every morning, you know. So it's not like we got to go far to, you know, to do those things, you know. And it creates a dynamic. You know, I think a lot of churches, I think churches think you have to make a choice. Am I going to be a social worker, or am I going to be a pastor who preaches the gospel and teaches the Bible? And what we're trying to discover, what we're kind of discovering, is you could do both.
Right.
You could reach homeless people, and then you can still make Sunday morning about preaching the gospel and teaching the word of God. And they're not against those things. They're open. They want to hear. And that's been a challenge, though. How do you do both? How does that, you know, what can that look like in a church? And it's kind of, I got to say, it's kind of an adventure. It's pretty fun.
Speaking of adventure, let's talk about the story of the guy that came in with a beer in your church.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so with this, I have the sound guys over here looking, wiping their head like, oh my goodness. So check this out. So a guy comes in with a beer, and you know, you'll tell the story, but would you let someone with a beer walk into your church? For all the listeners, would you let someone come in with a big beer into your church and sit down?
Well, I can answer it with the story. We already have, and we already do. Yeah, it's a funny story. And it was funny because it literally happened to me like a week before I came out to teach at that pastor's conference. I think it might have been the first time at the pastor's conference the word beer was used. And it wasn't like I didn't use it in this negative, like, kind of a thing. Because a guy came in, you know, he comes in he was educated, he was smart, but he'd never been to church.
Yeah.
And he came in with what was most comfortable for him. He had a big, huge beer, like a just massive, huge
Those things are
can.
giant over
yeah,
there.
giant European beer,
2 liter.
Yeah, I mean, just like, mini keg kind of a deal,
Exactly.
And some girls had brought him to the church who come to our church, and they're all in the same college. And he walks in, and it was obviously that he was freaking out. Like, I don't fit in here. And his language was more colorful than anybody I had ever heard.
Oh,
And-
so he's just cursing like crazy.
he is cussing like a sailor. It was hilarious. I mean, and I was so proud of the first guy that met him, one of our kind of ushers. He met him, and he didn't freak out by the guy at all. The guy was cussing like crazy, and he didn't say we don't use that language in this building, or anything like that, because our building is just a building.
Yeah.
Church is the people of God.
Right.
It's
Yes.
not the building, and we want to differentiate that. That it's just a building. When we leave it, it's just a building.
Yeah.
And so he just told the guy. So the guy was having a hard time, and he said, "You know what? Maybe you'd be more comfortable sitting right here. Maybe you don't want to go in, and that's okay. You don't have to go in. If you want to sit right here, watch it on TV, drink your beer, and sit here, you'll be comfortable." If that makes you happy, and the guy's like, "Is that okay?" Yeah, it's no problem. You can
Just
sit
loving
there.
him, yeah.
Yeah, just go ahead and drink your beer and all. And so he sat out there, and he came up to me afterwards, and he said, with all the cuss words that I'd ever heard in my life, in like one sentence, but his message was, I'll shorten the message here a little bit. His message was simply, I've never heard anybody talk about God like that. And I
Epic.
thought, like, what was it worth it to me? And the moral of the story for me was this: if a few people in my church who are Christians were offended by that, I'm willing to accept their being offended
Yeah.
to win somebody to the Lord.
That's the whole goal.
Yeah. And so luckily in our church, nobody was offended. But had there been, I would have accepted that, I would have accepted that.
I think this is so important too. If you're just tuning in right now, this is Live with Ryan Ries. We have our good friend Phil Metzger in from Budapest. So what an amazing story. If you guys want to call in, the number is 888-564-6173. Again, the number is 888-564-6173. Being in Budapest, I know you were at the church last week, and you said one of the things that's prominent there is human trafficking.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yep.
huge. A lot of people know about human trafficking, but how big
Yeah,
of a
tell us
problem
about
it is over there.
Man, yeah. So Hungary, being in the center of Europe, like literally in the center of Europe, is a transit country. That's what they call it in terms of those who deal with or are part of this issue of human trafficking. And what that means is that Hungary is not a stopping point for countries. Hungary is not where, when they basically we're talking about slavery. People are taken either from, say, Asia or the Middle East, or from Russia, or even further in Eastern Europe, and then they're brought over to Western Europe or America, and they're promised jobs. You're going to be a dancer, you're going to be in modeling, whatnot, and we'll take care of your family. And their passports are taken, and they're shipped across Europe, and they're slaves, and they end up in every situation. They end up in it's porn. Plain and simple. Or they're sold to some rich dude, and they're a slave. They're just a sex slave. And so in Hungary, every year, 150,000 slaves are moved through that
Every
country.
year.
Every year.
I've been to Amsterdam and stuff in the red light district, and all those girls are all from
Yeah, that's
that part of
the
Europe.
world. Yeah.
That's where they ship them all. Because there's actually red light districts all through Europe.
Yeah.
Amsterdam's just the known one, but there's one in Germany, there's one in Denmark. They're all over the place.
Budapest has its red.
Yeah.
And there's a part of Amsterdam red light that's called it's a Hungarian word, Nyíregyháza, and that's a city in Hungary. It's all Hungarian girls that are there in that area, and they're all slaves. It's human slavery.
It's crazy.
That whole scene, man, is so demonic. As far as what the enemy has done, ripping girls off like that, and it has so much greed and all the stuff that's involved in it. I know a lot of gangs, like even locally, are all into it. Because you sell dope, you sell drugs. That drug, once you sell it, it's done. You got to go get more. They use these girls because it's something that they can continue getting money from all the time. It's so whack. It's so evil.
Yeah, it is super demonic. Not only that side, but just kind of since we're talking about this whole sex trade and porn and stuff, I actually came across a video last night from Focus on the Family. What's his name? Dobson.
James
James
Dobson.
Dobson.
James
Yeah.
Dobson did an interview with Dahmer. Oh, we're at break.
Yeah, that's
okay.
fast.
Well, hey, we got some calls
back.
coming in. We're going to take some calls when we get back from the break. We'll see you guys back in 2 minutes.
More More Live with Ryan Ries coming up.
Is everything all right?
Call now 1-888-564-6173 or post your questions using the hashtag Live Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.
I think I speak for the entire administration when I say whoop-de-doo.
Now, back to Live with Ryan Ries. Don't say we didn't warn you. Loud noises!
we are back. Just having a good time in here with our boy Phil Metzger from Budapest, Hungary, and Sean McKeon is in the studio. Before we went to break, we were talking about just about his ministry out there in the inner city in Budapest, and that whole conversation led to some guy came in with a beer his first time in church. They're hanging out. He's cussing like crazy. So the usher doesn't have a panic attack. He lets him come in the church with this beer that's the size of like probably 2 liters. If you've been to Europe, you've seen those things. And he walks in, and the usher said kindly, "Hey, why don't you just sit right over here and you could be more comfortable over here on the side." And just giving that grace card. That grace card is so important because either that guy could have said, "Hey, man, the beer, you're cussing, I don't think church is the place for you," which is actually exactly where he needs to be. He didn't kick him out. He let him sit down. And after, the guy came up to Phil and basically said, "Hey, I've never heard the gospel like that before." And he's going to your church now, and he's still in the mix.
It was a week before I left for here, so I have no idea.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens when he gets
so.
back. And then from there, that whole conversation led into sex slavery, all this sex slavery that's going on, human trafficking in that country. And then Sean was basically just talking about the whole, how evil it is, how demonic it is, the sex. I mean, you're selling a woman, a soul, or a boy or whatever. You're selling someone for sex, and you're making money off them and everything that goes along with that. And what's interesting is last night, I was watching a video with James Dobson with Focus on the Family. It was an older video, but he interviewed Dahmer. Was it Dahmer?
Yeah, the one that murdered
Jeffrey
Dahmer.
Yeah. Jeffrey Dahmer before he was going to get the death sentence the next day.
Oh, yeah.
So these are like the last final hours. They're sitting there and talking to him, and basically what Dahmer says, I mean, he was breaking and entering. He was drunk. He was going and chopping people up, actually having, doing sexual things with these people. It's just disgusting. And the last murder this guy had was with a 12-year-old girl. Mm. And so he's sitting there, and James Dobson basically says, "Hey, man, these are your final hours. There's media all outside. They want to talk to you, but you're not talking to them. You only want to sit down with us for the last hour." So what happens is basically he found the Lord. He gave his life to the Lord, but he was talking about what got him in to this stuff. And what happened is it started with softcore or soft porn, like Playboy and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then, just like all sin, it evolves. You get numb to it, and you need harder stuff, just like harder drugs, harder drinks, alcohol, those things. And the porn got harder into hardcore stuff, and then it got into violent stuff. And then he was watching like thriller movies, like murder movies, plus he was watching like hardcore violent kind of porn stuff.
Right.
And then he said he's drinking, and that opened up a doorway where he felt like something was coming over him, which we know it was demonic.
Oh, yeah.
You open your doorways to the stuff, and then he was going out and having doing these acts with these things. So it's just so crazy. People don't think about porn. I mean, the statistics say 68% of men in church, I go to church, consume pornography. And that's just the people who admit it. So the statistics have to be higher. And girls these days too.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Well, in our society, with so many things are so fast, technology is so fast, definitely the social media, and everybody always needs like stimulation visually. And whether it's, and this is a thing with like young kids, me and my wife talk about with kids playing video games and everything like that. When they start getting overboard with it, those can be issues, because then they can't start communicating and having contact with people. And a lot of times they only find their outlet through things like that. And people go down other avenues. And pornography, like you said, it could start off small. Before you know it, it can get really, really bad, dark. Yeah. And that's what happens, man. The flesh is never satisfied.
Well, let's. Do you want to take a call?
Yeah,
we got a lot of calls coming in now. So let's go ahead and shoot. I got to pull the computer over here.
Yep.
All right, here we go. We're gonna go ahead and take the call from Albuquerque. I can't see the name from here. Did it just say V? V.
Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Good. How you doing? What's your question tonight?
I was just wondering where we as Christians should draw the line on addictive behaviors. Like, I don't know, I just feel, coffee gets me high. I see people vaping, in church, prescribed meds. We're all taking prescribed meds, and they can be really hardcore, and it's just starting to, medical marijuana, it's just starting to feel like everything's all right, even for Christians, just because, there's reasons. What do you think?
The gray areas. Well, since we have our guest in studio, I'm going to let Phil go ahead and take this.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Hey, V, it's good to talk to you. That's a great question. And I think that when we talk about addictive behaviors or addictive issues, you're right. The list seems to be getting a little bit longer in our day and age. The reality is this: I don't think there can be a simple answer that just says, here's where we draw the line. The point is that we don't want to give ourselves over to anything that's going to take us away from the Lord. Ultimately, whether it's a physical addiction or whatever it might be, we need to guard ourselves. We need to know our limitations. We need to understand our own weaknesses. I would simply say that we need to know where we're weak. The Bible tells us to examine ourselves. And so instead of me drawing like a policy line, here's where addictive behaviors need to be, here's the line on that, I would simply say this, that we as Christians need to be so aware of who we are and where we're weak. And so where I'm weak, I need to be very rigid in my lifestyle. I need to be very cautious and very careful. If it's marijuana, or obviously that's well, I don't know. I don't live in America, so it seems like it's legal everywhere now. But
Pretty much.
if it's illegal, we need to avoid those things completely. If it's coffee, maybe I need to pull back a little bit. I think that we need to hear from the Holy Spirit. We need to let God lead us, but we need to be aware of the fact that we are weak as Christians. And we have addictive tendencies.
For someone like me, I mean, I had a major addiction. What's it called? Addiction personality, addictive personality. And as I gave my life to God, my whole goal was when I gave my life to God and I started reading the Gospels, I started realizing there's all these things. God starts revealing all these addictions and these things in my life. So I started going to God, God, I need to start getting rid of these things. I went from porn addiction to sex addiction. And then I went from God took my cigarettes away. And then I went to vaping. Then he took that away. And all these different things. I even took a Xanax and these different things. But the closer I drew to God, the more I became a Christian, the more I read about him and who he is and how he sets people free. Then I started realizing there's a lot of stuff that I'm a slave to that God needed to clean me up. So basically, I just started digging into the Word and God started cleaning me up. So as for being a Christian and addicted to all this stuff, I mean, whoever the Son of God sets free is free indeed. And you want to live your whole life as a Christian being addicted to this stuff. And basically, if you're a Christian and you're being enslaved to this stuff, you're going to spend your whole life in this really, like James says, you're double-minded. You're going back and forth, being tossed to and fro. You could spend your whole life being a slave, or you could actually get what God's promised us, and that's to be set free of all these addictions. And he'll take each thing away, I don't know, some in a year, some in a month, some in a day. It's just over time. So thank you for calling in. And we're going to go ahead and take, here's another one. Is it Jolene from La Habra?
Yes.
How you doing,
What's going on,
Jolene? You're
Jolene?
listening live with
Hi.
Ryan Ries. And what
Hi,
is your
how
question?
are you?
We're doing good.
Good. Actually, I was just listening to your conversation right now, and it kind of hit home with me because I called in and just mentioned that I've been a Christian since 2009, and I actually was Lord. I had lost my mom suddenly to a massive heart attack.
Sorry about that.
And I was just, in a really bad place, just lost. And I was raised a Catholic. I never read the Bible, nothing, until I started going to Calvary and Diamond Bar with my husband.
Sick.
And started reading the Bible, started going to Bible study. And then all of a sudden, about a year after my mom had passed, I started suffering from anxiety. And I would go to the doctor, and they just would prescribe me, like, medication, Prozac, and I never felt in my heart that that was the right thing for me to do. I just felt like I was just going through a hard time. Now we're going on 6 years later, and I just feel like I'm just consumed. Like, every day is a battle, whether it's depression or I feel anxious. And I mean, I go to church, I read, I pray, and I just feel like sometimes I feel like I can't break through from them.
You can't have victory. Jolene,
No.
I'm going to share a couple things with you, but if you're in Diamond Bar, I would encourage you come by and see myself or see Ryan anytime. We'd love to pray for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Your question, how do I deal with this anxiety and depression? Obviously, it's going to be what you're doing right now as far as prayer, the Word, coming to our church that teaches the Word of God so you can grow spiritually. I think what's very important to think about here is that a lot of people can feel like bad because they feel this way. I shouldn't be feeling anxious, or I shouldn't be feeling this way. If you go in the Old Testament, you look at David's life. David wrote so many Psalms, but there's times where he's like praising God and how good God is. And other times he's like, Lord, are you there? Do you see like my enemies surround me all over me? Paul went through a lot of stuff. There's history of Charles Spurgeon, a famous preacher who had battles with depression. And so you try to, how can I distinguish what's anxiety and what's spiritual warfare? It is mixed together at times, man. And the Bible tells us what to do. We need to be anxious for nothing, but pray about everything and be so focused on the Lord that the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard our hearts and our minds. I have close friends that are legit believers and Christians that are like go-getters, like you would never think that they would battle with this, but I see it in his eyes sometimes when he has a moment and boom, anxiety knocks him off his feet for a couple of days. And it's one of those things that are like a weakness in our flesh. I have physical problems. I get migraines. I have stomach issues and stuff. I was talking about this last night. Sometimes the Lord allows these things in our life to keep us humble and connected to his heartbeat. Because like, Lord, I can't navigate through this life apart from you. Like, I need to stay so close to you. And so when you look at a weakness like this, the Lord says this, that in your weakness, you can become strong, that his grace is sufficient for you in his weakness. So what I would do, Jolene, is just call out to the Lord like never before. Pray, recognize that this isn't because you're a bad person. It's not because of anything. This is because we live in a fallen world. There are things that we all battle with. This is your battle, but you don't need to go with it alone. You have the Lord. You have a church that loves you, would love to pray for you, encourage you along the way. And there are doctors that can help at different times, but when you have a sensitivity to the Holy Spirit and you feel that it's not right to do this particular thing, don't do it. And at the same time, if things get worse down the road, you go to somebody that's a legit, like maybe a Christian doctor that can kind of give you good advice as well. Okay?
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling. Hey, you know what? I want to make a correction. It was Ted Bundy.
Oh.
Ted Bundy.
Well, he dealt with Dahmer too.
The other serial
Did he?
killer.
Yeah.
Ted Bundy's the guy.
Ted Bundy. Yeah. There
Ted
you go.
Bundy, just to bring that up. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. People need to hear this next question. All right, Paul from New Mexico. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I had a question. I was trying to get back with my ex-girlfriend, but she doesn't believe in God and the church ways, or the Bible.
Yeah. Well, that's a simple answer. You don't want to be unequal yoke with a non-believer. You don't, basically, in normal terms, you don't want to be with someone that doesn't believe in the same thing that you believe in. If you're trying to follow Christ with all your heart, you get caught up in a girl that doesn't believe those things. Because if you're a Christian, you don't want to sleep with, you're not supposed to be sleeping with her or fooling around anything sexually. And if you're with a girl that doesn't believe in that stuff, a lot of girls that aren't Christians, they believe that you must have sex or else you don't love them. So you're going to find yourself in a situation where, maybe you are trying not to have sex with her and you're dating her and she's not a Christian. Well, sooner or later, if you guys are alone, you're messing around, you're going to fall, and then your whole Christian walk's going to fall apart and you're going to backslide. And then the enemy, Satan's going to come in and say, you're a coward, you're a dumb Christian, you're not even a Christian, you're a hypocrite. And he's going to try and pull you away from the faith completely. It's better just to kick back, wait on God, go to church, find out who you are in Christ, and let God bring that girl that he created for you.
Right.
He created you guys to be together and wait on him. And if it's God's will that girl is the one, to bring her to church. Don't date, be friends. Bring her to church and see what God does. She might be over it and peace out, and you just saved yourself a lot of heartache. I dated a girl that wasn't a Christian, and I went through several abortions. She cheated on me. It just nightmare. I mean, if you want to light up for chaos, date someone that is not aligned with Jesus Christ. I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
Save yourself the trouble, man. Love you, brother. All right, let's go ahead and take. Here we go. Maria from. Oh wait, I'm sorry. So here we go. Barbara from Newport Beach. How you doing, Barbara? What is your question?
Hi, I just wanted to ask you guys how we can make a gay couple feel really welcome in our churches and not feel judged, because some of the group will, when they're openly affectionate with one another, will be judging them.
I spoke at, we can all add to this, but just for one example, we had a girl, she was married and she was coming to our church for a while, but she wasn't with her wife. But we just loved on her. I knew she was married, and I told her, just keep coming to church. And she's like, I don't like men. I said, don't worry about it. That's the least of your worries right now. I go, you just need to fall in love with Jesus and see who he is. And after months, 6 months, 7 months of her just coming to church, hanging out, us just loving on her, she dressed like a dude. I mean, you knew she was gay.
Right.
We just loved on her. I actually went out to go, me and some of my friends, we all would go out and eat dinner and stuff and hang out and just love on her like she's a normal person. And God ended up working in her life, and she found Jesus. Then there was another church I spoke at out here I think it was Albuquerque, or it was in New Mexico somewhere. I can't remember the name of the church out there. It's by Skip's Church, but it's on the other side. But anyway, they had a couple, 2 lesbians that would come to their church for a year straight, holding hands. I seen them walking up, holding hands, walking into church, and they're like, that's a gay couple. They've been coming to the church for a while. I'm like, dude, that is so cool. And I go, you guys don't even trip on them? And they're like,
so
no.
awesome.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, no problem. They let them in, and they would come in, they're holding hands, coming in, sit in the church, and they just loved them to death. And actually, when I was there that night, they ended up giving their life to the Lord. But it took a year. And guess what? They held hands every time they came into church. They weren't making out or anything like that. You know, I mean, they were respectful for enough, but they were front row when I was speaking. They were sitting front row holding hands.
Oh. Yeah, I think a part of, Barbara, if I could add something else in there, and that is that we tend to, we talk about a homosexual, and we tend to, it's all about their sexual identity, but
Of who they are.
Yeah,
Right.
like that's their life. But they're more than that. They're more than just their sexual identity. Absolutely. And so, we don't say, oh, we're going to reach this person as a heterosexual. we don't make that kind of, clarification. And so in one sense, I think a part of us being able to just love people who are different than us is by not identifying them by one part of their life.
Right.
If we want to identify them by any part of their life, it's that they need Christ. That's the issue. The core is that they need Jesus. Yeah, we're seeing it in ways that make us uncomfortable. We got to get past our own uncomfortableness if we want to bring Jesus. And so maybe we need to love people who are gay. We need to stop seeing their gay element as the only element of who they are.
Right.
Absolutely. Cool.
People need to be loved, man. The Bible says the love of God leads to repentance. I mean, God loves us. He has a long suffering, and He has patience with each one of us.
Amen.
That's the core. No, you nailed it, dude. Seriously, when we were talking about just, we have to see past all that, because you could judge. You could just look at someone and you could just judge them, or they're homosexuals or they're transgender. I mean, I had a 13-year-old come up to me at church the other day, and she thinks he's transgender.
Oh my goodness.
13 years old. I mean, what do you do? It's like you just got to love them and help them through this little hump in their life, So here we go. We're going to go ahead and grab this Maria from Pomona. How you doing, Maria? Oh, and really quick,
Hi.
Maria, I just need to plug something. If you guys are listening to Live with Ryan Ries, if you're driving, you want to call, you've been hearing what's said, call in at 888-564-6173. That's 888-564-6173. So, Maria, what is your question tonight?
Hi, my question is, I'm a Christian and my brother's not. He's not saved, and it's been heavy on my heart because I want him to be in heaven with me when that time comes.
For sure.
But obviously I'm not in control of that. But this weekend I found out that he's addicted to meth because he was in emergency and I had to go to the hospital. Wow. And I don't know what to do because that's not something that I'm used to, and I look at him and so now I feel like an urgency, but I know that I can't force him.
How old is he?
He's 55.
He's 55. Has he been doing it for a long time, or you just found out right now?
Yeah, I had suspicion 6 years ago that I didn't think he was still doing it, and I just questioned him, and he said apparently he's been doing it for like 20 years, and it breaks my heart. And if my mom found out, he told me not to tell her, and I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, Maria, this is the thing. God has brought you into, you guys are family. This is your brother. And what you're called to do right now is to intercede on his behalf and pray. Recognize that there is a battle. This is definitely spiritual warfare. I had a battle with meth multiple times in my life. When me and Ryan were younger, we went through a deep thing of meth when we were like 17 to 20. Then we got sober off it. And then for me, I got heavy on meth again all the way before I came to the Lord. And I would say about meth, I think it's one of the most deceptive drugs that are out there. Because when you first take it, you feel like you're in control. You feel, I remember the first time I took it, I got all the answers right on a test. I'm like, oh man, I can do all my homework and do all this stuff. Construction, I'm doing all this work. But before you know it, it owns you just like anything else, and it becomes bondage. For him doing it for so many years, it's become his way of life. I remember when I was doing it, I thought I needed it for conversations and everything. And you don't think that there's anything wrong. You actually think that people around you are tripping. You're good. You got it under control. But the reality of it is, just like the call that just came through about the homosexuality thing, without Christ, there's emptiness in every man and every woman's heart. And that's what you need to pray for God to show this man that emptiness and that void that is in his heart can only be filled by the Lord. And this is your prayer. Lord, whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. Whatever it takes. If you want to humble him. For me, I was pulled over in a DUI, got busted with meth in my car, was arrested with a controlled substance. And those are things that led to breaking me where I'd come to the Lord. And that really should be your prayer. Because in yourself, you can't do anything about it. You can love on him, keep communication with him. But I think that the main thing is realize that it's a spiritual warfare thing that's taking place. Love on him. And when he has that open door, keep an open door for him as far as communication. And then get him help. You can call us anytime.
You live in Pomona, so that means you're close to Calvary Chapel Diamond Bar. We have a night on, when night's the Tuesday night thing?
Is that wrong for me to just take him and not tell him?
She's going to bring him tomorrow.
No, you can bring him tomorrow. I'm there. I mean, if you're in Diamond Bar, you can bring him by.
Yeah, bring him by. We'll be up there tomorrow. We'll pray with them. We also have another night on Tuesday night called New Thirst. So it's for people that are to give you a new thirst than drugs or alcohol.
Right.
But if he's willing even to go to a rehab, we work with U-Turn for Christ or Teen Challenge. So we would love to help you get him into one of those programs for a while if he's willing to do that. But yeah, just if you want, just come up and meet up with us tomorrow night. Church starts at 7. No, what time does it start?
When?
6.
Tomorrow night?
6
Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Yep. And we'll be there, Maria.
Thanks so much, you guys. I appreciate
Okay,
right.
we'll see you
everything you just said. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow then.
Take care.
Radical. Okay, well, you know what, you guys? We have a couple more minutes. I think. How many more minutes do we have? We have 3. We have 2 more minutes. So let's just run through this stuff again, Sean. I mean, if you guys are listening, we have the high school tours, Kill the Noise. We're going to Watts, which is what's the name of this high school again?
The one in Watts is David Starr Jordan High School in Watts, and that is September 23rd. Summit High School in Fontana, September 30th, and Rancho Verde Moreno Valley on October 2nd. But like Ryan said, they're booking a lot of dates, so make sure that you guys go at the email at info@ryan-reese.com. Again, local listeners, the 3rd annual baptism is going to be next week, August 15th at 10 a.m. at Pirates Cove and Newport Beach. And don't forget to sign up for Israel.
And if you've been moved by the show and you're really identifying with it, you know, anything, if you guys give any kind of donation or whatever you guys do, that helps us fund going into high school. So it's actually help us do outreach. So, yeah, if you want to do that, where can they donate at?
They can go to the whosoevers.com and be able to hit the donate button. Real simple, real easy.
That's radical. Thank you. Phil.
Dude.
It's been epic.
It's been my privilege.
I want to do like 5 more shows with you.
I'll come back anytime, man. I love you guys.
Dude,
you guys
Phil,
are awesome.
just keep doing ministry like you're doing it. I think when you spoke at that pastor's conference, me and him were both, like, it's just so fresh. You're able to connect because you realize, man, there's people that are so messed up and lost. And if we get like this religious vibe to them where we can't connect any longer, I mean, why the gospel? Like, we are called to preach the gospel. You know, I was here just before you came to the show. I was sitting outside drinking a coffee, and I see these 2 young kids, 15-year-old kids, talking back and forth. And I overheard their conversation, and they were talking about, you know, I got a bunch of meth on me, blah, 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 and they're going back and forth. And they made eye contact with me. And so I said, what's up, guys? And then when I was leaving, I didn't, you know, preach them or anything, but it just, you know, they were young kids. They're 15. You know, I have kids now. I was like, hey, man, I just want to let you know, life goes by real quick. Real quick. And with everything, there's consequences to everything, man. So I would just say, man, I've lost a lot of friends. I've seen a lot of people OD. I know you're young doing your thing. But recognize, man, life is here today, gone tomorrow. Yeah. Just left them a little bit of that, and I just left. And it's so important because I know Ryan's heartbeat has always been connecting with the people. Yeah. Recognizing we're in a desperate need in our nation. Like, a lot of people can be discouraged with everything that's taking place, but this is a time for ministry.
Time for Jesus.
Yeah,
dude.
Absolutely.
We're living in prime time. And if you're driving on the highway right now and you're listening and you're tripping on everything that's said, look, it's this simple. Invite Jesus Christ into your life when you're driving. Say, Jesus, forgive me for my sins and reveal who you are and come into my life. It's that simple. Until next week, we'll talk to you then.
Peace.
This has been Live with Ryan Ries. To connect or find out more about Ryan, click on ryan-reese.com. Check us out next Saturday at 9 p.m. for Live with Ryan Ries.